All right, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking about, of course, Russia and Ukraine again. This time, though, I want to call out the entire country, really. I want to call out our entire uh, United States government from top to bottom, who are cheerleading for war. The media is trying to ramp the war up. Um, they're showing the side that they want to show. And look, there's no excusing that Russia has gone to war and they basically went in there supposedly not provoked, but from their point of view, what was happening within that country. Again, the Cliff Notes version is the western part of Ukraine was shelling the eastern part of Ukraine for about 8 years. And the media used to report on this stuff. And it all started when we went in there and basically did regime change. We did regime change in Ukraine. And that regime change was almost to set up like a proxy war outpost for the United States. And then, of course, you have these biolabs that don't exist. They're not there. They're not real. Oh, no, we were told that they are there. But what we should be most concerned about is that the Russians get in there and do something dastardly with, sorry about that word, they do something nefarious with those bioweapons, which aren't really bioweapons. They're just chemical compounds. You know, I wouldn't worry too much about it. I mean, we only had 2 years of chaos and confusion, and you know, that wasn't a bioweapon either. That was just, you know, a random virus that just happened on its own. So my big contention here is that nobody is saying the obvious thing, that Congress must declare war. Now, how are we getting around this? Well, we're getting around it because we're just providing logistical support, billions of dollars in logistical support, and US made weapons, which are being found abandoned everywhere. This is kind of like, yes, let's give them a bunch of weapons. And then the people that we don't want supposedly to find those weapons, in this case, it'll be Russia. They're finding it because I've seen videos of them, and they focus on all of the heavy duty artillery, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars worth of armaments that are, you know, just and this is much like what happened in Afghanistan when we just, you know, did the cold turkey thing. And I was all for getting out of Afghanistan, but you should have had a plan on how to leave Afghanistan and not leave like $65 billion worth of equipment there or something like that. It's just, these numbers, by the way, once you start talking billions and, you know, the Pentagon, it's like $1 trillion. Shouldn't we have a vote? Shouldn't we have a vote? Shouldn't Congress be forced to go on record and vote for this crap? Now, this big, huge budget that passed, I guess, $1.5 trillion worth of, you know, giveaways to companies and countries and rich people and tax breaks and all this stuff. Very small amounts of that are actually going to have anything to do with infrastructure or getting to the working class of this country, which you're starting to see, by the way, a kind of a cool coalition between some on the left and some on the right, what I call the honest left and sort of the rogue right. They're not see, it's insane that people on the right, this is disturbing that they're all, after what we went through with George W. Bush, they're just like, oh yeah, let's do this again. Let's do our own shock and awe part 2. This would be great. And I'm thinking, you know, have you heard what Putin said as to why he's in there? I mean, nobody cares, right? It's not a topic. Nobody's talking about why Putin is there. And nobody's talking about diplomacy. Nobody is talking about what Russia says will end this, which I think is very reasonable. But, you know, you're not going to hear that. All you're going to hear, it's kind of like, there's nothing else you can do about this problem. You have to wait for us to come along with the magic bullet and we'll fix it. Much like what we had the last 2 years. You just shelter in place, right? Shelter in your mind. Don't think too much. Your mind needs to shelter in place, and we'll come up with a solution, whether it's Fox News or MSNBC. When all of the networks are united, right? And you say, well, they represent, no, they don't represent anything. They represent corporations, they represent their owners, and they do probably represent what the government wants, but not what the people want. And the government in this country, whether you're left, right, center, it's been rogue for a number of years. And, we have various degrees of rogue. We have authoritarian, but then we have more totalitarian. We have soft dictatorship, I think, in progress right now. Some would say under Trump we had that. I think Trump was much different compared to what we've had over the last 40 or 50 years, I would say. Trump, Reagan was a little different. You got to go way back. JFK obviously was very different, and so was Eisenhower. And doesn't really matter what political party you're from at this stage. You've just got to look reality in the eye and say, is this benefiting the United States? Is this in our vital national interest? That's the first question. Second question is, why are we rushing to promote something that could destroy the entire planet? Really, just seriously. I mean, that's why when people come along and they say, well, it's just a culling thing that they're doing, they're just getting rid of some people, they're worried. Look at what's happening. Look at all these things that are happening to make people like change their behavior. Stay in your house. Don't drive. Now it's don't drive. Oh, it's okay though, because gas prices came down like 20 or 30 cents. That should be cause for celebration. The news this morning. See what politically what that is okay, we can jack those prices up now, but as they start coming down, we can take credit for it and tell the world, look what we did. Despite what Putin did to us, look what we did. And then it's this blanket hatred of one man, and there's no accountability for people like George W. Bush, the late Colin Powell, Donald Rumsfeld, all of these names from the past that did far more to destroy so much people and infrastructure, and again, building this economy, war-based economy. If we go to war, then the stock market goes up. Although that's not working out right now because there's just, too many factors. Yeah, they spent a lot of money in this budget, and that again will be like, a little financial steroid for a while, but how long is that going to last? It's going to be super short-lived. The market, everything is very tumultuous and up in the air. And again, my main contention though in this video is that Congress needs to declare war if they're going to do this. And they're already providing logistics and all of this financial support. And yeah, even people who are going off as heroes on the local news, they're going off to fight in Ukraine, and they didn't expect that they were going to get shot at when they got there. See, and here's the big risk with that. Say a bunch of Americans go over there rogue to volunteer, right? That should be illegal, by the way. You should not be able to go to a foreign country as a United States citizen, right? Unless you have dual citizenship or something, but you should not be able to do that and just volunteer to take up arms with another country. That to me just sounds like a violation of something. I don't think it is technically, but when I hear these stories, I'm like, the G.I. Joe culture, I'm sorry. I mean, if you like to kill things or kill people and break things, I get that, but there's a certain limitation to just like unleashing it upon the world all the time because you have this desire to do damage to things. I don't know. There's stuff going on at the southern border. I would probably recommend heading down there And by the way, you've got Ukrainian refugees coming to the United States, adding to the flow into this country, because everybody knows this country is super soft. Nobody's accountable for anything. The cities are already overwhelmed financially. And a lot of these refugees are probably going to head out to the suburbs because we've destroyed or weakened or made many cities unlivable. So we've got to now probably work on the suburbs and more rural communities. This is the consequence of war. This is the consequence of not doing diplomacy and just running this narrative that Putin evil. And whether you, even if you do think he's evil, think about this. Isn't there a better way to work this problem, to work around or find a solution to this problem? There has to be a better way than sending $13 billion worth of aid and all of the weapons and the news media. Everything is on board. And you can tell when we left one narrative and started a new narrative, and now there's some crossover because people are kind of climbing back and saying, oh, did we finish with the pandemic narrative? Nope. We didn't quite finish that. We need to go back. I feel like we need some closure there. They don't want you. By the way, there's no closure in any of these narratives. There was no closure after we couldn't find the weapons of mass destruction. There was no closure. It was just like, oh, we'll find him eventually. It's like looking for OJ's real killer. Well, we'll find it. Don't worry. Bush did that goofy press club thing. He's like, nope, no weapons over there. Ha, ha, ha. And he's joking about something that's absolutely mind-boggling, where hundreds of thousands of people lost their lives because we were taught to hate all Muslims for many years. And there are so many Muslims who are peaceful people, majority. And there's just a small part of one of their, religions, the section of a religion, basically. And I can't think of the name off the top of my head, and I'm sure somebody will post it in the comment section, but it's a relatively small minority. And I would liken it to some kind of whacked out ideology like the KKK here in the United States. It's very small, and it's easy to isolate, and it's probably easy to defeat. But what we do is we weaponize it. We weaponize the information to scare the crap out of everybody. And we did that for the last 2 years. And now we're doing it with this. And look at the country. This to me is playing, you pick up the card, here's the card, you play the war card and you throw it down and you say, okay, if we're going to have any chance in the midterm elections, and by the way, all the Republicans are trying to do is stop some of the bleeding economically in this country. And maybe they'll do it. Even if they just stop this guy's agenda, I think actually it would be a good thing. But they're probably going to agree, right, with all of this warmongering, and that'll still be part of the budget, and people will still be neglected, and people still won't get the stuff they need based on what the government has been doing for the last couple of years, bankrupting people. And, the dollar is another thing that just going down the tubes. It's the inflation rate. Like I tell people, if you go back and use 1982 metrics, and they said it was 7.9% in 1982, and it's supposedly the same right now. They use different metrics in 82. Those metrics included far more indicators to get you to 7.9 in 1982. If you use the same metrics today, it's 15% inflation. It's already way over double digit, 15%. So we are getting hit on all sides, and nobody, I don't even hear like Rand Paul asking, maybe Thomas Massey, he'd be the guy I think who would say, hey, aren't we supposed to declare war? And shouldn't we have a vote on this? But none of these clowns want to be on record, right? Marjorie Taylor Greene, she supposedly doesn't support all this stuff, but yet she has all these holdings, right? It's like Raytheon and Northrop Grumman or whatever she's got. And It's kind of laughable. It's like, Marjorie, I will listen to you, but first you've got to get rid of all of your financial ties to the war machine. I mean, hey, got to hand it to her. If you're going to invest money and you see bombs dropping, you see that we're shipping large quantities of weapons and tanks and hand grenades, whatever it is we're sending over there. Yeah, that's a good investment, right? That's, you put my money on Raytheon for 1,000, Alex. I don't know. So I'm wondering if we'll ever challenge the status quo here. Somebody will challenge it and say, I do think that we need to at least have an end game. This is a thing that we never have when we go to war and we support a war. What's the end game? You're gonna wear Putin down? That's your end game, and he's just gonna Putin's no way. Do you think Putin's gonna surrender? You think all the sanctions are gonna destroy Putin? I don't think so. I mean, their finance guys are working on all sorts of ways to just pull out of this global system. And quite frankly, I'm a little jealous of these countries that don't want to do business with NATO and this old New World Order. I'm a little jealous because it's like they're going to be independent. They're actually going to downsize. They're actually going to be more decentralized because they're not dealing with some NATO rules and NATO overlords, and all the NATO people have to come together and spend everyone's money who works hard so they can again try to remake the world in their image. This is failing. This has been failing for a while, but it's failing even more so now. And if Russia did anything during this, I think they woke some people up to the idea that NATO is a bad idea, and countries should have their own borders and their own language and their own culture, and they should have the right to determine their own destiny. And you'd say, well, you're saying this, but look what's happening to Ukraine. Well, again, talk to the people in Donbass region and see if they've had the right to self-determination. And 15 or 14,000 people in the last 8 years have lost their lives because we decided to do regime change there back in 2014. So yeah, that was us doing that. We caused that. And look at it this way. Putin waited 8 years and he said, okay, I'm tired of waiting. Those are basically our people down there and they're not being treated well. And it's way beyond that, obviously. And then you've got this whole Azov battalion thing, which adds a whole level into this, as well as the imaginary bioweapons laboratories that don't exist, even though Victoria Nuland said they did exist, but they're worried that they're going to fall into the hands of the Russians. They're not worried at all, though, that they're there in the first place. They're not worried about the research going on in those facilities whatsoever. They're only worried about if Putin gets his grubby hands on them, what he might do with that technology. And God help us. That's all I can say. I mean, we are walking up the driveway to World War III, and if we don't turn around, it's going to happen. And then people are going to go, I can't believe this is happening. And of course, they're just going to blame Putin when we could have done diplomacy. We could have just discouraged all of these economic sanctions, which again, what they've done effectively, though, is they've pushed Russia to a place where they're saying, you know what, we don't want to be a part of this anymore. You guys have mistreated us in this arrangement. China, do the United States oligarchs and all of these big corporate moguls, do they really want Russia and China teaming up? And China just holds all the cards, like the rest of the cards. Russia doesn't hold that many cards, but if it's Russia, China, India, and Brazil, that's a pretty powerful alliance to start with. It's not like a couple of countries, banana republics you've never heard of before, right? This is a new world order, like I said, and I don't think there's any turning back from this, which also will mean the destruction of the dollar, the whole petrodollar concept gone. And yeah, do they want to push you away from fossils and fossil fuels rather, and not just fossils, like old people in Congress would be pushing you away from fossils? Yes, I would say push you away from both. But they only want you to do the thing that they want you to do, even though you're not financially ready for it, even though the technology isn't where it needs to be, unless the government wants to subsidize everybody, which I don't think, I don't agree with. But if they were proposing, yeah, we'll give you this, we'll give you the charging station, we'll give you the car, but you pay, whatever price, and then the government picks up the rest of the bill. Because yeah, we are spending $1.5 trillion, right, on what, I'm not sure, but we're spending, it's 2,700 pages, so I'm not going to know what's in the bill. I guess, again, like Nancy Pelosi says, you'll have to pass it to know what's in it, and then you'll get all these wonderful surprises over the next, I don't know how many years. We're in a lot of trouble. But bottom line, as I wrap this up, is Congress needs to be declaring war, and not the media industrial complex.